To get to the Gale online resources, we can do so by accessing Classlink. In Classlink, you can find the icon in the grades 6 to 12 folder, and it will look like this. If for whatever reason you cannot find it, you could always go to the search bar on the top and type in Gale, Gale, and that will bring us to our Gale resources page. From here, we can go ahead and pick our grade level. Now, it's worth noting that the middle school and high school student view is very similar to what you're going to be seeing in the teacher view. So I'm going to go ahead and click on middle school. And then once we get into Gale, you'll see a few things on the top menu bar. A few things that are worth noting. The first is the language. So here we can go ahead and change from English to Spanish, and you'll see some of the terms change. Some remain in English, and then later on in this training, you'll see where we can go to further translate this page. Next, we have this Google button. So if you're not already signed in, you would click here and you would sign in with Google. And you can see here, the reason that we might do this is to save documents, citations, and highlights to our Google Drive. You'll also note there's a Google Classroom button here. And we'll get into this a little bit later in the session. However, this is where we would go ahead and share resources or post assignments through Google Classroom. And finally, if you're using Microsoft products, you can also sign in with Microsoft. Next, we're going to take a look at the search features within Gale. When we start, we can go with a basic search. To do so, we just plug our cursor into the search bar. And let's say I'm doing a topic on national parks. I can go ahead and type that into the search bar. And you can see that will give me just a basic list of results. Now, if I wanted to narrow that down, we do have the ability to do that using the advanced search. You can see here, if I click advanced search, which is located under the search bar, it will bring me to a page that lets me narrow it down based on our filtering options. So I could type in here, national parks, that'll be my keyword. And as we scroll down, you'll see the ability that we have to really narrow this down as far as by document type, right? And depending on the research that you or the students are doing is what you're going to use in this advanced filter. But now I'm going to go ahead and go by content level. So let's say I know my students are in between this 851 and 1100 Lexile range. I can go ahead and click on content level 3, and I'll click search. And you'll see here, it breaks it down. Now the resources are all within that range as far as reading level. The other things that we will see besides our basic search and our advanced search are these icons in this middle bar. So in the middle, we have the Browse Topics button. When we click on Browse Topics, it's going to give us the topics, all really just a long list of topics that we have to choose from. If you're looking for maybe some brainstorming ideas, that's a good place to start. So that's our Browse Topics button. Next up, we have the title list. And the title list is a little different. This is something that goes a little more advanced. So if you wanted to see, let's say, what is available with certain context, it will go ahead and generate an Excel file, and then it will show you what's available and what subject and where you can find it. So that is the title list. Next up, we have our search history, which it's just like any other history. This will show us what we've looked for in the past. We have the Get Link button. So let's say I want to plug this link into Google Classroom or with a colleague. I can go ahead and take that button and then share this link with whoever it may be that is going to be accessing this material. And then finally, you'll see this Highlights and Notes button. And we'll see this a few times as we go through Gale. If we click on that, you can see that I don't have any highlights because I'm not clicked on a specific article right now. But that's where we would click on to see any highlights we have as far as the topic that we are going over. As we scroll down the page, we'll find a few other search features within Gale. The first being the topics of interest. This is generally more current event related, and you'll get a little carousel of articles with images, and the different articles will vary depending on if you are in the high school or middle school section of Gale. If we continue on down, we will see the Browse Topics section. And here you'll see an image along with a specific content area. So let's say I want to go to US history. Well, this is going to give me an alphabetized list of all the different subjects and different research areas that are related to US history. So that's a nice place to start. If students are having a hard time figuring out what they want to do their topic on, or what's available to them. Now on the bottom, we see this Educator Resources section. And in the Educator Resources section, there's this Curriculum Standards button. If we click that, it's going to give us the ability to filter our results based on specific standards. So we can sort between national and state standards. So I'll stick with national. And then they also have it broken down by the different subject areas. So let's say we're doing science and we want to use the NGSS standards. Then we simply pick our grade level. So we'll do middle school. And let's say we're teaching energy in physical science. Well, you can see here, it will list all of the different subjects. And then we can just hit search all, and it will break it down and give us all of the references that are available for that specific standard. Now, if I go back, we will also see the Educator Resources button. If we click on that, this will bring us to a support page. So the left side deals more with troubleshooting and how to make different things work if you're having issues. But on the right side here, this is actually something that you would be able to give out to students. As you can see, this is a resource on judging the validity of information, and you can share this resource out with your students. When we type in national parks, you can see here we get all content types by default. That means there's audio, magazines, images, etc. And you can see the list right here on the top. And if we're going to focus here towards the right side, where it says filter your results. If we look down, there's a box that says content level. If we go ahead and click on that, it shows us the different Lexile levels and what these icons mean when they are next to a source. So let's say that my target group here, they're level 3. I can go ahead and check that box and hit apply. And now I will only get resources that fall in that Lexile range. If you want to remove it, you can go ahead and hit this X where it says applied filters. Next is one of our favorites, and that is called the topic finder. So if you scroll a little bit down, you'll see here we have the topic finder. I simply click on Start Topic Finder. And what this is it's working off of your basic search and then giving you a visual of words and topics that are associated with whatever I typed in. So again, we did national parks. So we can see here that we have a few options. Let's say I want to do Yosemite National Park. If I click on that, and then I have more tiles to choose from. And it gives me the different articles and research about each one, the farther and farther I go. If I want to go back, I can just hit reset. Let's try another topic. Let's do civil rights. Again, this also takes into account current events and what's happening right now. So as you can see, we have all of these tiles to choose from. Maybe I want to go with John Lewis. And then you can see here, again, all the different areas to really dive down and target it on. So that is definitely one of our favorite features with Gale Resources because it's really friendly and it's really welcoming on the eyes. Now, if we're all set, we can go ahead and I'm going to go to the previous page. And up on the top here, you can see that we have national parks. If we want to start over, we simply click Revise Search, and that'll bring us back to the beginning. And we can change our filters and the different things that we are searching for. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this article here. And then we can see on this top toolbar above where the article begins, we have a few options. The first is to translate. So we can click there if we would like to change the language from something other than English. Next is the font size. We can make it smaller, make it larger, whatever the user's preference is. Next, we can actually listen to the article. So I can click here. And it's going to highlight what it's reading. You can choose the different features as far as the how it reads to you. And we do that by going to this little settings cog. And this is some really nice accessibility features here. We can see here if we want the text highlighting on or off. And then you can customize the highlighting, the word colors, the speed of the reading, etc. Again, this is really nice for students that may have dyslexia or other special needs. This will make a big difference when they come about these articles. The other icon next to the settings is the download button. So you can click that, and then it's going to give you this little pop-up box. And that's just saying that you are going to use this for personal use. You're not sharing this out with, a school or a class. So if you do want to download the audio file, you can do that here. And then moving along, we have the Google Drive button. So if I click on this, it is going to send this article to my Google Drive. If you prefer using OneDrive or Microsoft, you can click on that icon. However, I know most of us are Google Drive users, so I will stick with that for now. And then the last two we have is this little mail icon. So I can send this article to multiple people or one person. And then over to the right, we have this download button. So it would just download it as a PDF. Now we're going to take a look at this top toolbar. We're going to start with the Cite tool. If we click on Cite, it'll give us the MLA, APA, and Chicago formatting as far as citation goes. We can click the Select button here, and that will highlight all of the text, and we can copy and paste that into a document. The other option would be to click this Google Drive icon, and now it will export this citation to our drive. Some of the other icons you see up here, you may have seen earlier on this video, but we're going to take a look now at the highlights and notes icon. We're going to focus on that. So if there's something that we want to highlight in an article, you simply select it using your cursor, and then when you let go, it will allow you to choose what highlight color you'd like. You could add a note if you'd like, and then we hit save. Once we do that, it now is embedded in this document, if you will. So what that means is if we click the download button, and then I open up the downloaded document, you'll see that highlight transfers over. The same is true if we were to send it to Google Drive. The highlights will remain on that document. As long as you're in your Google account, those highlights will stay with the document. If you want to delete a highlight, you click on it, and then you would just go to the garbage can, and you can delete the highlight.
A little bit about Gale Resources and the great items that it has for us as well as for our students. Let's take a look at how we can utilize some of those resources in combination with Google Classroom and other Google products. So first, if I want to get to my Google Classroom, we just want to show you a reminder that you can go to Classlink, you can click to sign in, and once you've signed in, you're going to look for the folder that's labeled Google Apps. Some of you might have to scroll to find that. Others of you might find that right at the top of your Classlink page. Once I click on Google Apps, I'll see a list of the different Google programs available to me. And towards the top, I see Google Classroom. I'm going to click on Google Classroom to open it. And at this point, I can choose the Google Classroom that I'm going to work with. Now, if you have a lot of Google Classrooms, remember this can take a little bit of time to load. I can see my Google Classrooms have now popped up. In order to get a better idea of how Google Classroom works with Gale Resources, let's log into Gale Resources and show you how we can put an article onto Google Classroom. When I go into Gale Resources and search for the article that I'm going to be looking for, I can click on that article. And when I get to the article, one thing I will notice is at the top of the page, there's a Google Classroom button I can click on. When I click on that Google Classroom button, it's going to ask me to share to a classroom. For the purpose of today's instruction, we'll click on the Gale Resources class so we can find the article in a quick manner. When I go to choose an action, I can choose to create an assignment based off of this article. I can choose to ask a question in my Google Classroom. I can choose to make an announcement, or I can create a material that students would always have access to. Note that you might create an assignment if you want a due date or points assigned to the specific task at hand. We're going to look at making an announcement so we can find this article in a quick and efficient way on the stream of our Google Classroom. When I click to make an announcement and press go, I can type in the message that I want my students to see. So I'm just going to ask them to read this article. I'm going to choose the Google Classroom that I would like it to go with, which is our Gale resource. I also have the option to choose whether or not I want this to be for all students or differentiated, and maybe I pick a couple of students that this article goes to. And when I'm ready, I can click to post. Remember, if you click on the down arrow, you can schedule when the post goes out. You can also save a draft of this if you want to come back later. We'll click post just so we can see how this is going to look. And now it says it's been posted in our classroom and we can view that. Remember, we can also get to our classroom through Classlink. We'll click to view, and this will take us to our Gale Resources class. And now we can see that at 10:15, an article has been posted from the Gale in Context Middle School program. When I click on this article, you'll see that students now are taken to Gale Resources and they can start to work on this article, taking notes, downloading it, citing it, answering questions, whatever task you're asking them to utilize. Who's taken notes on an article and you would like your students to be able to see those notes and maybe analyze them, use them in a Google Slides presentation, some other manner, please note that the Google Classroom button will not allow you to share the article in this manner. When you share the article on Google Classroom, the only notes that students would see pertaining to the article are notes that they've taken themselves. If you would like to utilize Google Classroom in a way where you can get notes to students, you would go about that in a little bit different manner. So let's show you that now. So let's say I have this article about the national parks, and I've gone through and I've taken some notes, and I would like my students to see those notes. What I can do is I can click on the Google Drive button. And when I click on the Google Drive button, this document or this article will be shared with my Google Drive. So now if I know that that article is in my Google Drive, I can go to my class link, again, find Google Classroom in the Google Apps. and go to the classroom that I'd like to open. Again, for this presentation, we're going to go into the Gale Resources class. And for this item, we'll make a material. So we're going to go to classwork and we're going to go to create, and we're going to create a material from the document with its notes. And we're going to say, check out this document and analyze the notes. And we'll title it that. That actually could be in our description as well. And we're going to go to add, and we're going to choose a file from our Google Drive. Now in our Google Drive, our recent items will pop up. So if I scroll down just a little bit, I can see that now we have the Gombe National Park article ready for students. Now, one thing I would let you know is that right now, this file or document is in a Microsoft Word format, which would make it hard for some students to open it. Usually what we recommend with Google Classroom is that it's put into a Google Doc format or a PDF format. So what we would do then is we would go to our Google Drive. And once we are in our Google Drive, we would search for that article. We can see here it's showing up in the priority area, or we might go to recent, find the article in recent, and choose to open it. When we open that article, we can see again it's in that Word file. So what we're going to again do is we're going to choose to open with Google Docs. And we can see that when we open it in Google Docs, it still kind of has that weird .docx for Microsoft Word after it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to File, and we're going to go to Save as Google Docs. And so that Google Doc now will open up. You'll see that the blue .docx is not available after this item. And so now when we go back to our Google Classroom, we can go to Add, we can go to Google Drive, we can look for the name of the article. And when we get to the article where we see the blue square with the lines in it, we now know that it's a Google Doc, and it's easier to share out with our students. And we can post that item for them to look over and ask them the different tasks we'd like them to complete. So now that we've posted this material, we can see it's gone to the top of our screen and it's available for students to look at. Before we jump into some more neat features on that teacher perspective and ways that you could utilize Gale resources for your students, we did want to show you a neat feature that allows students to share information with you based on the research that they've completed. So if I were a student working in my classroom and I found a great article that I utilized for the assignment I was completing or for the project I was working on, as a student, I could click on the Google Classroom button. And once I click on the Google Classroom button, just as a teacher, I would see that I can choose a class. And if I scroll down far enough, I eventually can find the class that I'm enrolled in as a student. So we're going to join this chemistry class and we're going to add something to it. So in my chemistry class, I've been asked to complete a research paper. So I'm going to click on chemistry. I'm going to click on the assignment research paper and I'm going to press go. Once I do that, I can choose to attach this article for my teacher to see. Once I click attach and go to view assignment, I can see that I've completed an assignment called research paper that I've added the Gale article about Yosemite National Park to. That way the teacher could see the specific resource that I utilized in my research for this project. When I'm ready, I could choose to turn this in. I could also press add or create to add another resource to this. So one thing we did want to show you, again, if I were a student and I took notes, what I would probably do is take my notes and we'll highlight it and put note number 1 and click save. and I want my teacher to see the notes that I've taken and the words that I've highlighted, I could, as a student, go to the button here that says Google Drive. That document will be added to my Google Drive. And then as a student, I could go back to my Google Classroom. I could add or create. I could go to my Google Drive. And as a student, if I look at my recent files, I'll find the Yosemite National article that I read, and I'll see that the words are highlighted in this version. I can double click to add it, and it should be set to go. Now, as a teacher, you don't have to worry too much about having the students convert this out of a Word file, because as a teacher, you would have access to be able to open that file on your computer. If you feel comfortable in teaching students how to convert those items, you could do that if you feel it's necessary. So now as a student, I'm going to press Turn In. I'm going to turn in both of these items to my teacher. And now I'm going to just double check, and I'm going to make sure I have an article that's been shared. Here are the highlights I took as the student. And now I've given my teacher a copy of this Word file with my highlights in it as well. Jumping back and forth from your Google Classroom to the Gale website to your Google Drive, it might start to get overwhelming and feel confusing, and you might have trouble finding the articles. But we did want to let you know that there is one way that this program tries to make your life a little bit easier in that manner. So if you're working with articles and you start putting some of them in your Google Drive, and we'll do that with this article. And we'll even go back to the Gale Resources and choose high school. And we'll leave that middle school platform for just a second so you can see how this looks. And I'm going to explore the topics of the 2010s. I'm going to read more. And I'm going to take a look at this article about 2010s and click to put that in my drive as well. And so now I go to my Google Drive and I say, you know what, I could look in my recent, but I'm still having a trouble finding an older article that I looked at. Or maybe I had an article from 1 month ago that I shared with students, and one of my students who fell behind is finally getting to that point, and I need to find the article again. I can go into my Google Drive, and when I go to my drive, I can scroll down to the different folders that I have, and I can see that Gale Resources has gone through and created a Google folder for me for middle school and for the high school platform. So if I open the high school one, I'll see the article I chose there. If I open the middle school Gale format, I'll see the different articles I have here. And if I click on these articles, again, please note that you can see any highlights or notes that I have taken in relation to that article. So just a fun little tip there to make your life easier in working with this program. As a teacher or a student, you can imagine that you could get pretty creative in how you utilize this program for research, but especially when you combine it with other Google products. So we're going to show you some of those. And the first one we want to show you is a simple example of using this program with Google Docs. So let's say I want to work as a student and create my works cited page. I could type in docs.new to create a new Google Doc, a blank one that I'm going to work with. And I'm going to call this my works cited page. And I'm going to put Gale Resources after it, just so I know that it goes with the program. And so now, when I go to the article that I'm working with, I can scroll down to the very bottom of the page. I can find the works cited example from this article. I can choose what format I'd like my works cited to be in, depending on what the teacher expectations are. What I also like about this program is it gives a little disclaimer that this might not be up to date depending on the teacher and or professor requirements that are necessary. But let's say I want it in an MLA format. I can click to select. I'm going to press Control C to copy this works cited, go back to my works cited Google Doc and press Control V. And I can see that this article has now been cited in something I utilize for my research. If I go to the article that we were utilizing for middle school, I can choose to select. I can Control C to copy it, and then Control V to paste. Please note that also with these works cited, you can utilize some other programs. You can even export them to your Google Drive. If you do that, we'll go into the Google Drive and show you what it looks like. So we'll go to our recent. And if we scroll down, we can find that works cited citation that was created. Now we note that this is in the Word format. So we can see that again, it's been downloaded to our drive or exported to our drive in a Word format. That's why I prefer the copy and paste method, because it goes right into the Google Doc format that is easier again for us and students to use in collaboration. In addition to using Google Docs with Gale Resources, there is a pretty neat way that you can use some of the items inside of Gale for creating a slides presentation. So if I were to go to create a new slide presentation and type in slides.new, I would get a blank presentation that I can start to put information inside of. Now, obviously, I could go through and I could put in here facts and information that I get from the articles, but I could also utilize the pictures inside of Gale Resources to make my slideshow kind of come to life. So we wanted to show you how you can do that inside of Gale. So I'm going to go into Gale Resources, and I'm going to click on middle school. And since we've been working with that national park idea, I'm going to type in national park. And at the top where I get the different materials that come across inside of Gale Resources, I'm going to click on images. Now, what I would do is I would typically scroll down to find an image that I think fits with the topic I'm researching. Now, if you scroll through this, you can eventually find different national parks and different sites that you can take a look at. Now, these aren't the exact national park that I was looking at in my research, but we'll use the pictures anyway just for this example. So if I find this picture of Yosemite National Park that I think is valuable, I can click on the picture. And I can go through and I can take a look at it. Now, one thing to note is that if you put this file inside of your drive, or if you choose to download it, that file will come across more of a PDF or a Microsoft Word file. So let's show you how that looks. So you can see I downloaded it. It comes across as a PDF, not as a JPEG, as a picture. It comes across here. As we scroll down and look at this PDF, we see the image and then we see the copyright information. One important thing to note as an educator is that you and or your students can use these pictures as long as you're using them for personal or non-commercial use. Having said that, I would always recommend that you still use the source citation when you're going through and using these pictures in a slides presentation or a Google Doc or another avenue that you choose to utilize. So now when I'm inside of this item, I could right click on here, but it doesn't seem to save the way I want it. So what I would recommend that you do is you go back to the picture inside of your Gale Resources, right click on the picture and do Save Image As. When you save the image, you can put the title that you would like. So we'll call this National Park. And we're going to save it to the desktop so we can find it a little bit quicker. And now when we click save, that image is going to be saved to our desktop. And now we can go to the Gale presentation that we created. We can go to Insert, Image, and we're going to upload from our computer. And we find on my desktop the National Park picture. We double click on it, and we can see now that we have this nice image from Gale Resources that we have in our slides presentation. Now, students could follow the same process. When students are looking at a picture, they're pretty good at this at the secondary level, but sometimes it would be a 2-finger tap on their Chromebook, which would be a right click for them, and that would allow them to save the image. So if a student would contact you and say, I'm trying to right click, it's not working, sometimes it's good to recommend that 2-finger tap. The other option is you can click on the picture and hold it. And if you're holding the mouse and you drag the picture into your Google Slides presentation and let it go, you can also have it appear that way. So there's a couple of different ways to make that happen. Just like in other Google products, there's never only one way to do something. You got to find the way that works best for you. Now, since Gale Resources has a lot to do with research and finding quality information, another Google program that you could utilize to organize your information and get it set up in a way that best works out for your research paper or project that you're giving to your students is in using Google Drawings. And within Google Drawings, you can find lots of templates for concept webs. And the nice thing about Google Drawings is that you can create your own concept webs in a pretty quick and efficient manner. So the concept web you see here was created. We found this template, but if we wanted to, we could make additions to it. So maybe I say on this concept web, I want another thought bubble added to it. I could go to one of the thought bubbles. I could press Control C and then Control V to copy and create another secondary idea. I could press Control C and Control V to create another line, and I could add in that extra thought. Maybe I say, you know what, for my class, I need to color code this in a different way. I could select the shape, I could change the color, and I could change the wording of this to maybe the third idea. Okay, so I can get pretty creative in how I want these to look. And a lot of using Google Drawings is going through and inserting shapes and text boxes in a way that you think will work well. So if I were to go and insert a shape, for example, maybe I want my concept web to have circles. So I'm going to put in a circle here. I'm going to double click inside of the circle and I'm going to put my secondary idea. I'm going to go up to the top and change it to red. And I'm going to make this line just a little bit thicker here. That goes around the border. And I'm going to say, you know what? I don't really like the lines. So I'm going to go to Insert Shapes and put an arrow. And I'm going to have an arrow that kind of goes to this thought bubble. And I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so it connects then to my secondary idea. So you can see, you can go through and be very creative with this. You could put in pictures, you could put in different headings. What I like about this concept web that we found here is that it has instructions in here talking about main topic and related idea. Now, as I'm using this concept web, what I could then do is I could go back to an article. I could look for my main idea. If I'm looking at national parks, maybe my main idea is going to be that everyone should visit a national park. And I can put that here. And I can then eventually start to look at that article and edit my ideas that are going to go in here. Again, if I was working with the pictures, I could go to find a picture related to that article, and I could drag it into this area as well, just as I did with my Google Slides presentation. Now, if we go to our Google Classroom, and we go to the Gale Resources Classroom, I could go through now and I could create an assignment that I want my students to complete a concept web. And what I can do is I can go and add from my Google Drive the concept web that we've been working on. So now if I double click on this concept web, I can have Google make a copy for each student so they have their own concept web that they can edit and change based on the information that they are looking up and finding and based on their topic. I can go through now and I can decide, do I want to have a point value? Do I want to have a due date? Do I want to put this in some sort of topic that I have on my Google Classroom? And when I'm ready, I can click Assign. When I click on Assign, each student now would have their own copy of the concept web that they could go through and complete. When I click on the concept web, please note that it does open the one I was editing, so you can see that the changes have been updated. In fact, you can see that I have this open in another window because my name is popping up on the concept web. So a pretty nice feature and creative way to use Google Drawings with your students. Definitely think about other ways you could use a concept web or Google Drawings as it pertains to Gale resources or other programs that you utilize in your classes. As we're bringing this presentation to an end and talking about how Gale resources can work hand in hand with Google products, one thing to think about is when you're going through these items and downloading things and putting them into your Google Drive and that sort of thing, one thing to think about is that a lot of times the items that you're taking out are actual links to the articles. So if I click on Get Link, I can actually get the link for the article. If I choose to send to and I choose to email, I can email it to people, and think of it almost like the link is what's getting emailed. And the reason we're kind of telling you this at the end is because it allows you to think about ways you could be creative in utilizing these links. If you're a teacher or part of a school who uses hyperdocs a lot or menus for your students to complete work, you could give them the links to different articles inside of that hyperdoc to help them accomplish the task at hand. You could put these links inside of a Google form, and inside that Google form, students would go through, they'd look at the article, and then maybe you'd have a short quiz that happens after it. So you can get really creative in how you want to utilize these items in Gale resources, whether you're downloading them or utilizing the link. You just kind of got to work with what's best for you. Don't be afraid to collaborate with those co-teachers inside of your building. Also, as you're working through this, please feel free to contact your technology integrators. They would be happy to help you figure out ways to work with Gale resources inside of your classroom and helping in that virtual setting, especially as we get started here with first quarter. So please reach out to us. We will be there for you. Having said all of that, thank you for joining this session and this video. We are very happy that you chose to take a look at it and try to start utilizing this resource. Again, if you have any questions, please let us know. Thanks again, and good luck on the start of your school year.